Hey there, Wendy here with Jazzydoodledesigns, and today I'm just going to do a quick little color along and show you how to color this grayscale bunny. I am using Albrecht Dürer watercolor pencils. However, I do not activate these. I just liked how they felt in the book, and so I didn't activate them. And when I'm done, I sprayed it with a workable fixative so that as I work in the book, I don't transfer any colored pencil to any other page. So let's get started. Okay, so let's talk about grayscale and what it is. So grayscale, unlike line art, this is your typical line art, right? You just have the image, maybe a few little, the artist has put in a few little dots here for the shadows, but for the most part, it's 100% on you to figure out how to color this page, where to put the darks, the lights, whatever. With grayscale, the artist has done that for you. So you can see on this teacup, there is a gradient from a dark gray to a lighter gray, indicating where the shadow would be and where, where the highlights are. Now, in this particular line art, I thought I would show you the difference between darker grayscale and lighter grayscale. This image is by Monia Gates, and it actually comes in light, medium, and dark. So I just thought I would play around with the lightest and the darkest because everyone has a personal preference. So here I'm going in with powder blue and I'm just going over the entire thing. I just mainly want to show you at this point that even the lightest shades can go over the darkest dark grayscale. So that's what I'm doing here. Then I take my burnisher and I burnish it out because I want you to see it with no white spots. And I'm using a pretty toothy paper, Bristol vellum. And so, without burnishing the color, you can really see the white spots. But do you see how the shadow's still kind of there? Now what I did here is I went in with cerulean blue, which is like 2 shades up, and I just kind of went into the darker spots and then blended it out with that powder blue. Now ideally you wouldn't have wanted to use your blender prior to these steps because it definitely makes it harder to apply color. Now here I go in with slate blue and I add this color directly to where the artist has depicted the shadows to be. Then I went over it with the cerulean, and now I'm blending it all out with the powder blue. You can really see the difference that this makes to do it this way. And then I go in with a second layer. But you can see how much more vibrant it is because we didn't lay down that initial layer of the powder blue, which is going to dilute your color quite a bit, especially with Prismacolors. Other colors you can layer a little more. Not that you can't layer Prisma, but they lay down so much pigment. But you can really see how that grayscale really adds the depth, and yet it doesn't look gray. Let's go in and just use this really light, this is putty beige, and I'm going to color this scale. So even with really light colors, you can color over this grayscale relatively easy. And you get the shadows and the contrast even with just one color. I think that grayscale can be a very good learning medium as well, because you can see where the artist put their, where they put the shadows, and over time you will develop a little better sense of where you should put them when you're coloring. Like where these meet here. There's a lot of beautiful images out there. So my suggestion is do what you like to do. If you don't like grayscale, don't feel bad about it. If you love grayscale, then have fun with it. Coloring is supposed to take us away from our, not our life, but whether we have pain or depression or whatever, you can kind of lose yourself in these images and just start focusing on, well, what color should I add and what would go good here? Focus on your community, the people that you surround yourself with in the coloring community. Share your work and be proud of it and have a good time. And I think that's more what it's about, but I don't think there should be a stigma that grayscale is cheating. I think it's a bridge, is in my opinion. It definitely helps me see how the artist shades this. So if I was looking at this as a line art, I could see, oh, I see how she went around, the edges of this, our cloud here, right? And so that when I am faced with line art, I get a feel for where it goes. But I like the look of grayscale. I feel like it looks good. So do what you like. Okay, so when you color grayscale, it's really no different than coloring any other image. The only difference is the artist has actually literally layered in the shading for you. So in this bunny, I start off with Bistra, which is my medium color. So think of this color as the color you overall want your bunny to be. And as you can see, as I go over the quote-unquote black or dark gray that you see for the shading, it becomes brown. Your colored pencil will color right over it. Now, as I move up the bunny, I am lightening my pressure. So as I go over those darker areas, I am pressing slightly harder or doing more layers. And then as I move out where there is no shading, I'm going to lighten my pressure. I'm also going to use lighter colors. So depending on your image, as you can see right in the center there of the bunny's ears is kind of a white spot. So I did not color it at all with this shade. So not even a little bit. Now there I very lightly go over that spot, but I leave the bridge of his nose light. Same with his tummy and his knee and the tips of his toes. I'm going to leave those all and not put any of this brown color on. Okay, next up, well actually this is still that color, just adding a little blending there. Next up, I am using Van Dyke Brown 176, and this is my darkest shade. And I'm going over just those areas that were really dark. Just putting on a kind of a medium pressure. I'm not burnishing down, but I'm not just kissing the paper either. and I'm just deepening all of those darker shadowy areas. The nice thing about grayscale is it really does all the heavy lifting. You get the fun of figuring out what colors to use. But it's really the artist is telling us where to put those colors. So next up, I go in with a gray just to add a little bit of a transition here between the light areas and the dark areas. I could have chosen to use like a lighter brown, like a brown ochre or something like that, but I really like how the gray blends out the brown without changing the overall color of it. By adding a lighter brown, he would have turned out to be a little more yellow brown. And I like that this is staying a little on the cooler side. So here I'm just going in and going over the eyes, going over the nose with the black. I added a little cinnamon into the ear. You could also add something like a light flesh beige red, or that's all the same color. Light flesh, I think they changed to beige red. So depending on how new your pencils are. These are also the same colors as polychromos, so if you have those. Now I'm going in with this warm gray too, and kind of going over all the white areas with it so that they aren't white, and blending it into my gray and brown. I feel like this is a good transition. It still kind of feels like the bunny's tummy is white, but it doesn't look uncolored. Same with around his eye. So down here at the bottom, I'm going to use 3 different shades of green, and I just kind of flick. If you flick your pencil in these little motions, starting at the bottom and lightening your pressure as you go up, you will get little pointed ends. So first I go in with my darkest color, then I add my medium color, which is this here, and those are the ones that I actually flick and create the actual grass strokes. And then I go in with grass green, and I just kind of, I don't know, smush this into the base of the grass. And really that's all I'm going to do. Here I just darken up the nose a little bit more and go in and do the little butterfly. Sorry about my head. Get my big old noggin out of the way. But we go in and just do the butterfly. And if you notice, I don't do the entire body. I chose to just kind of outline it a little bit. And here I'm going in ever so lightly with this light cobalt turquoise. Not doing the entire wing. These little hearts I'm doing in purple. And then kind of flicking that up from the bottom, just like we did the grass there on the base of the wing. And from the top now, doing the exact same motion, only just putting a little pink on the tips. I just feel like it ends up being not really any one color, and I kind of like it. So here, instead of doing the entire picture in blue, like the background, all I'm going to do is so lightly, and I would encourage you to pull your hand back from your pencil more than I am. Sometimes it helps if your pencil isn't super duper sharp. I'm not saying make it all dull and flat, but Sometimes if the pencil is way too pointy and you're too up and down, you will get scratching lines. So try and kind of work more on the side of the pencil. Believe it or not, I am. It's kind of hard to tell from the angle of the camera, but it's at about a 45-degree angle to the paper. And working in layers, I am just ever so slightly adding the blue, just barely kissing the paper. I can't emphasize that enough, unless you want it darker. I mean, that choice is yours. But if you want this look, I am just barely touching the paper. And here I'm just kind of rounding out to where I don't have like a gap in the blue. But I'm just barely going around the image, and that's all the blue I'm going to do. I'm going to leave the rest of the page white. But to me, when you do it this way, the picture looks finished without having a super duper background. Now, in retrospect, looking at it now, I would probably make the background a little less square, a little more organic shape. But I really like this look. I think it's a nice way to do backgrounds. Now here I'm going back in with that Bistra, which was my lightest brown, and just blending ever so slightly. I felt like there was kind of a stark line between my darkest colors and those grays. You could blend this as much as you want, but I feel like these are simple images and I wanted to keep it that way. Thank you for watching another video from Jazzydoodledesigns. If you enjoy adult coloring content, please consider subscribing. You can now find me on Instagram and Facebook as well. I welcome all comments and suggestions. Don't forget to like the video before you go. And until next time, take care.